That's mine. Yeah.
We're ready to go whenever we're ready. All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. This is the February 9th meeting of the planning board. Welcome. And we're gonna start with agenda item 1, call the meeting to order. Item 2 is we're going to adopt minutes of several meetings of the October 14th, December 8th, and January 12th meetings. Got those meeting minutes here, if anybody's interested in seeing them. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Any suggested changes? First, I guess we need a motion to adopt the minutes, and we can.
Motion to.
In a second.
Adopt the group it, Kyle, is it
Good.
all three? Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion, any modifications?
I do not.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, okay, those minutes will take care of the January 26th meetings next time. If anybody's interested, we'll post them on the website.
Come back to this at the end.
Yeah, it's at the end. Yeah, at the end. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the application by E. Runge Jr. for a site plan review of a proposed family burial ground to be located at 124 John Small Road, map I-02, lot 045A. And so just so we're clear on how we're going to go about this, the public hearing. So the way it works is the applicant will present the application first. The planning board will then ask questions of the applicant, and then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak to the application. And we'll take it from there. At this point, at the end of the public comment, the applicant will have a chance to speak, although based on some of the materials that came in, it might be a little more freewheeling than that, because I think there's a number of questions that were raised that we need in those materials that we need to understand. And I think a general back and forth may be the best way to discover that. So we'll take it as it comes on this point. After we have all that, we'll close public discussion, but we'll worry about that and talk about those procedures later. And so to start with, the applicant could present the application.
Yeah.
Don't feel like we do it.
So the best thing to do is to walk, and anybody who's speaking other than us, head over and stand in front of that chair, and that way you get picked up somewhere a little bit back that way, I think.
Okay.
Right, Nika? Yeah,
All right.
and that way you get picked up by the camera and the microphone.
Okay, well, I'm 80-something years old and I need to make some planning for the inevitable, and I've been doing this, wills, everything else, and one of the things I need to do is determine where I'm gonna be buried. And, I originally thought I was gonna be going to cremation, but, I'm determined now to go with a green burial or a natural burial, as they're called, which is nothing new. It's been around for centuries and centuries. Cemeteries around the country are setting up sections. We don't have them here yet. So I have enough land on my property and meet the requirements of the state statute to have one on my property. So this is what I'm applying for. I want to avoid the traditional burial situation of embalming fluids and metals, coffins and cement casket liners and all this sort of stuff. And just when I die, hopefully in my home, the kids will come, wrap me up in a shroud, call Nathan Dowdy, we'll cut a hole 4 inches, 4 feet in the ground, and I'll be buried. No fluids, no nothing. And that's strictly legal, and, I don't know much more I can tell you than that. It's just that this is just one thing on my checklist of things I want to accomplish to make it easy for the kids. Don't know what they're gonna do with me when I die.
Right,
I will mention one thing, because Andy's here, and that is that this is something we're seeing more of around the country. I have a friend that's on a cemetery commission in Western Massachusetts, and they opened up a green burial area last year with 100 spaces in it. And this isn't a traditional, cemetery, town cemetery for the municipality of Montague. And, they put in 100, I'm not mapped out 100 spaces. And in the year 2025, they sold almost every one of the green burial places and only 6 of the traditional ones. So it's quite something we're seeing. And there's one cemetery out of Wilmington's been out there for quite some time, that's all they do, is green burials, specialize in it. So that's my hope. I've already gotten approval from the state. I've gotten waivers from my next door neighbor, which was required to get the approval from the state. And it's under statute, there's a family burial ground section. And there's a guy who works for the state who would work with these, their cemetery specialists. At your Department of Human Services, so it's been an interesting process. And I think all I have left to do to meet their requirements is to put in 4 posts, which I own. I got them out of a demolished building in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm a salvage guy.
right, but thank you. And so, this is novel matter for the board, so there's, so we're gonna be figuring out exactly how the process works here. So, thank you. We've got your application in front of us. I also note that there is a notice that went out from the town to notice the fact that there was going to be a public hearing on this. It went out to abutters and whatever the distance is. It seemed like a long list of abutters. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Did you get the letter from Paul Demers supporting it?
And I got, and so what I was gonna say is I've got a few things, we added them to the website today, because a bunch of things came in, from my perspective today. They arrived at various times over the weekend. I suspect there'll be a member of the public speaking who's here. I put a letter from an email from Paul Demers to the board with his view on the application. Another document on the website and here for viewing with concerns about the application and some elements of it. And so got a copy here of all those documents if anybody is interested in taking a look at them, but we'll get into that now. To start with, we'll turn to the board and we can start with Paul since I tend to look.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just start with the application itself before we get into the details. As I read it, or as it was presented to us, we actually have 2 public hearings. And one that you checked is for a minor subdivision or the creation of the lot. And the other one is for site plan review, minor, for the use of that new lot. I would ask that the board treat them as essentially 2 applications, 2 public hearings. Because that's the way I read it, from the applicant. I did have a question related to that for the town, though. There's a notation at the top of it that the fees were paid with a certain check number. In our list of fees and everything else, there are separate ones for the two different types of hearings. Were fees paid for both of those?
I would have to double check with the clerks. My understanding is one fee was collected, assuming that it was. a
That's all I'm
notification.
saying. One.
And one hearing was advertised relative to the cemetery plot permission, and that's what the notices were sent to.
Okay, so like, the applicant has correctly identified the fact that he's creating a subdivision by virtue of
Oh, right.
recording a separate piece of land from yours, that's a subdivision,
Sure, okay.
all right? And so the subdivision fees are on the town list as well as the minor site plan fees. So as we proceed with this, I would just ask the town or the code enforcement officer to ensure that that administrative burden is taken care of. And, you know, if it's appropriate to ask questions, I want to look through some of this material and just encourage others who may have questions on the package themselves to please speak as well.
You
Do
wanna,
you, I mean, do you,
Hey, so-
have you both received the material in the same manner?
to me, it's unclear exactly what is being sought here. In part, it has to do with some of the references. What was that?
Family burying ground, this is the.
No, it's a family burial ground, but there's, and I don't wanna jump over you, Paul, but there's some lack of clarity to me exactly what's happening when, and it's land wise, and so.
The essence of what I was.
And that's it. And so the way I view this is, let's all talk about this in the current family burial plot application, what's here in front of us. And we'll figure out, I suspect we'll need to go to continue this hearing to get more information about exactly how this is playing out. And let me be specific, which is, there's a reference in the materials that it seems were sent, and that's a separate question, to the state referencing lot 45B.
45B yeah, that's my property is.
Which is
45B.
To be recorded with the county as a separate lot, correct?
I recorded with the county because I had to do that for the state. And I also gave them a copy of that to the office, a notarized copy to the office a
Right.
couple months ago.
That's a subdivision.
Yeah, what's that?
That's a subdivision.
Where it's
It was just required by the state that I do that.
I
Right.
understand, when one takes their parcel of land and creates two,
Okay,
if you are 45A
yeah,
and you take away a piece that is now identified as 45B,
that's a subdivision.
Yeah.
and so when we look at the ordinance.
Okay.
When you look at the ordinance, the question is, that's why I'm saying, would like some clarity as to what exactly is happening. To understand what it is, because we looked for 45B, it didn't exist yet.
It's been locked off for a family burying ground. And it's been registered along with the access to it from John Smallman.
So the
The map of it is in
Mhm.
here.
yes, and so, yeah, we have the map. It looks like a partial map of the.
With the road, which is
Right.
the easement, and then the lot itself.
Right. So the issue that Paul is referencing is when you take a piece of the parcel and you put it into a different part, you make a separate parcel out of it, that would seem to be covered by our ordinance as a subdivision, or at least,
For that.
and there's a specific section 205.5 in the ordinance that this,
It's 205. Conforming lot one,
205 is non-conforming, because I think 204 is.
205.5, excuse me.
205.5. So that non-conforming lot.
No, 205.5
Lot regulations.
is the lot regulations. And if you look at 205.5, this is what I'm trying to understand, exactly what you're up to in terms of the parcel. It says no lot shall be reduced in size by conveyance of a portion thereof unless both of the following standards are met. A, the remaining land is in conformance with the minimum lot size provided for the zoning district. And B, I skipped over some stuff there. And B, unless the land conveyed is in conformance with said minimum lot size, so the land conveyed is in conformance with minimum lot size, or is conveyed to the owner of the abutting property.
So the cemetery lot has to be in compliance with the code as far as minimum setbacks and everything?
This is what we're all trying,
This is what we're trying to understand.
It's only 288 square feet.
which is far less than the 1.5 acres required with frontage.
Yeah,
Town ordinance says, in order to
Yes,
subdivide, if one has frontage, 150 feet of frontage, the minimum lot size is 1.5 acres. Without that, it's a back lot, and it's
16 by
3.
18.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but there's no provision within our ordinance as we currently read it.
Yeah, no,
For,
I'm thinking of it myself from the Board of Appeals and Adjustments point of view, and I can't see it either.
correct, and the end of 205 says that if a lot is created that does not meet those standards, it can only be done so if it's conveyed to the abutter. This is when people need to adjust their lot lines. Okay, maybe somebody encroached and your neighbor wants to sell you that piece of
Yeah.
land so you avoid things. That's the only time at which our ordinance says a non-conforming lot can intentionally be created.
I didn't know that it applied here, but I mean, I can see your logic in applying.
Well, that's what that's what it seems to be the case, and so trying to understand what you were getting at in the process and the reference to 45B, we didn't, in the materials you sent, I didn't see any actual 40, other than the reference to the state in the application to them, what I'm assuming is the
I think
application.
45.B is Langren.
Just bear with it. You actually, in your application, you did apply for a subdivision. To be very clear, that's your application. You have applied for 2 things here. You've applied for a subdivision and site plan review.
I didn't know I was doing that.
And within your application, you have referred, okay, to lot 45, which is your neighbors, 45A, which is your current residence,
Okay.
and 45B, which is the family burial plot that you intend to create. 3 lots, okay, 1 subdivision. So we may need to see additional information related to this. I'm not sure at this point how to proceed.
Right, I think at this point, let's keep going, so we can get all the issues out on the table to make sure that we aren't missing anything. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I've referred to 20 or 45B. One of the questions is, you said you got the permit, you got a permit from the state.
That's
And so is the letter that you submitted that says section 206.7D1 at the top right, that says subject site plan application for family burial ground at 125 John Small Road, to whom it may concern, this one, is that what you,
It has the seal on the top.
right, that has a seal, but what you filed with the state, is it this document along with the attachments to it? And I can come show you.
What if you're asking what I filed with the state?
Yeah, I just want to understand what you filed with this state, trying to make sure I understand this, the filing itself. And what I think happened,
The only
Is-
thing that's in here that was involved in the state is their approval.
What did you provide to them so that they responded with that letter?
What I applied to them was what was required. Obviously, that's obvious. What was required is proof of the 4 requirements. 1, that it had appropriate setbacks. 2, it was marked in 4 corners. 2, it was 3, it was registered with the state, with the county registry, and there was an easement from a road to the cemetery for access. Those are the 4 points of it.
right, it would be helpful to have a copy of what you submitted to the state, but I know you don't have that with you tonight.
I suppose Cosgrove could provide that, that's the guy who is their cemetery god.
Right. Just so backing up, so you write to whom, so you reference lot IO 2-045B. So that doesn't exist yet though, right? Or in that form, if I'm right.
I'm sorry, Aaron, what?
I'll show you what I'm looking at, just so we're not. Yeah. Just trying to understand, so this doc, right, here, this document. It says requesting approval to talking about a 280-foot common driveway on their property at 125 lot.
I'm requesting approval of you.
Oh, so this is to us and up 45 feet.
That's the cemetery plot.
Okay. So that's what you're looking for approval. Making sure. So what it looks like is a subdivision of that parcel. But it sounds like you haven't.
It's not being divorced from the property at all. It's remaining a part of the property, but it's isolated by fact of deed to meet the requirements of the state.
Well, what's the difference?
I don't.
This is unusual. I've never done this before and.
Right, I think there may be an issue there that we need
Oh,
to
that's
understand.
so.
No, none of us have. This is fresh ground for everybody,
Yeah.
okay? And given what you said in your introduction, it might be the most popular application we see in the future. But we're all trying to understand the requirements.
Understand.
Okay. When you mention setbacks.
Yep.
All right, and I have the drawing contained within your application that is
Right.
evidently a partial image of a survey of your property or your neighbor's property. It depicts the 16 by 18 or 18 by 18 parcel. But does not give standoff distances that were part of the 4 criteria that you provided. The proposed burial ground is how far off your side lot line?
I'm sorry, Paul.
How far away from your side lot line is the proposed
20
burial?
feet at the minimum.
25 feet is the minimum.
20.
In the main CDC drinking water, they call out in the absence of any local ordinances, 25 feet. So that's something
No.
I can provide you with the reference that is here on the main statutes, and we can keep moving.
If we had.
On the distances,
Yeah.
there's obviously there's to a residential structure and to a drinking water source.
Exactly.
You provided us with information that says your intended location would be 140 feet, I believe,
Correct.
and a letter from,
From the well.
and a letter from the well. So on your drawing, is there the well house that's depicted
That is
in
correct.
front of their house?
Yeah.
And on your land, how far away is this intended burial ground from your well?
From my well, oh my God, it's several hundred feet.
But it's not depicted on the,
No, it's not on here because it's below the drawing that I sent you.
right, and my other question relating to that criteria is how far away from the residential structure that your house is this burial ground?
And again, this is to scale, and so you could figure it out by being further than shown on.
I think it's essential is for the consideration to have all the details. Any site plan needs to have the critical distances identified.
Okay, so this is from,
Yeah, so you have, since you copied a portion of it, it was hard to scale exactly what that meant.
yeah, see what I did is I showed those on I'm quite sure I showed those on my state application. And so those were waived.
Would that,
Right, but it would be helpful for us to see the full,
So
site
from my
plan.
well, and from my house. And I showed the septic, which is in the plan.
Mhm.
So you would like a drawing with that shows a plot plan with my well and house location. Anything else on that, plan?
As I understand it through direct conversations with your neighbors.
Yes, so they sent, and there's a letter.
Yep, and I read the letter, so that's specific to the distance and their understanding of that distance. But what I was gonna speak to, Ted, is conversations about their development of their land.
Yes,
As I understand it from talking to them, their intention is to move the existing structure across the street to the
Correct.
lot that's just been cleared.
correct.
Subsequent to that, they intend to build a year-round residence, post and beam style, down further on the lot towards the shore.
Not much towards the shore.
It's general statements, that's all,
Yeah,
the limited conversation I had with them. I think it would be important, given the convergence of the two activities, for you to note where they intend to erect their permanent residence.
I have a pretty good idea because they've shown it to me.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if you have that information, I think
I
that would,
don't have it in.
all right, but if you do, that would be another piece of information that would be very helpful for consideration. Not where their existing house is that's gonna get moved, but where the permanent house is going to be located that they intend to live in.
So we have to look at this in the future as well as the current.
I'm only going based on the conversations I had with the neighbors, Dad. I'm not trying to project into the future beyond what was told.
So
The
the,
house will probably be closer. The house will be pretty much the same location. Part of it's gonna be where probably Steve Graves' workshop was. And the well is gonna be over towards the Murrays.
And I'm sure that if they're developing plans for that, they could share them with you so you could depict them on your application.
so this is something that's currently planned and expected to happen.
This is what I'm told, but I'm led to believe, yeah,
Okay.
definitely not in the ground, not a.
Paul, do you have any other questions of the copy or
No, I don't, no.
I have. do you have any questions?
No, I thought Mike had some good point. I mean, I'll leave those to him. I mean, I agreed with some of his comments that he sent us. Deserve conversation.
Okay. At this point. I'm gonna turn to the members of the public to see if anybody has any comments. We've received some materials from Mike that were sent today, right?
Just one question, I was saying with the language, I mean, they haven't even gotten a permit yet for it, have they?
I didn't state that they had. I only have had personal conversations with them about their plans. And I see the lot clearing across the street underway or completed.
That's for his old house, yeah.
Correct. So it's evident to me, given what you just said, Tad, that we've actually both had the very same limited conversation with them. But if their intent is to construct a permanent residence on their land,
So how
differing.
much do you want in the way of plans, just the single plot plan of? Cause the thing is a big roll like this.
Well, just the critical distances that are called out in your application.
What's that?
The critical distances that are called out in your application. Distance to the structure, distance to their new well if there is a new well.
So if those are diminished by the new structure. Despite the one variance that I've gotten from, so I'd have to go back to the state again.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think we have to get through a number of issues here before you start making assumptions on what would have to happen
You look
next.
good.
But I think, let's just look through the application and see all the issues first. Right now, we're just spotting
The
questions.
existing application or a whole new application,
What was this?
of what you want me to provide here.
Well,
Way to speak.
when we finish at the end of the discussion tonight.
Yeah, we haven't made any decisions on anything yet.
Okay.
And I think right now, he's just asking questions that, the import of the issues is something that we haven't figured out yet either, right? How those bring to bear on an issue,
Okay,
so. So I'll turn to the public now to see what comments the public has.
Good evening, I'm Mike McKee, 107 Cottage Road. I have some concerns. I think the number one concern is that this is an incomplete application. So according to the zoning ordinance, under site plan review, to get to this point, an application had to be turned in and it had to be deemed complete before this was ever scheduled. So that's my first comment. To get here where we are tonight, there should have been a complete application. As I went through it, there were several things that I thought were lacking. Number one, there's no plot survey. So if your land, there's no plot survey, because we're talking about 245A. And the partial that was submitted is really of the neighbor. So you can't tell where things are on your property, on Tad's property. Why is that important? Well, in the application under the overlay districts, it was left blank. However, it is oceanfront property, therefore, shore overlay districts, shoreland zone applies. And whether or not it's limited residential, resource protected, any of those different categories should definitely be listed. Setbacks are, well, let me go to the map that was submitted in the application. In the application, the land use map, Township land use map was submitted when you're supposed to have the Township zoning map. So the zoning map that hangs in the town office on the wall, signed by the clerk, is the official and final authority for districts and overlays on Shabby. When you look at the property on that map, this burial site, family burial grounds, is within the shoreland zone. So officially, according to the Township zoning map, which is the final authority for districts and overlays, it is within the shoreline zone. Now, there's no real way to check that because there was no survey that was submitted of the entire property. So we cannot determine setbacks without that survey. Also, there are a bunch of wetlands that are right near the property. So the property next to 45A has a pond. In fact, as firefighters, that's one of our spots to go to get water. According to the National Wetland Registry, there's a bunch of different identified wetlands in the area, which could or could not affect whether or not it's resource protected. Because as you know, in the shoreland zone, the horizontal distance from the upland edge of a wetland, you have to be 250 feet back. Now, the other thing I'll say that is in the zoning ordinance, you can have a cemetery if you follow the process. Process is you apply, you have a site plan review with the planning board, and then you ask permission from the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. However, if this is in the shoreline zone, of the 35 identified land uses in the shoreline zone, a cemetery or burial ground is not one of them. So that's why it's critical to determine whether it is or it isn't in the actual shoreline zone. And according to what I could find is the official town zoning map, it is. Now that can be refuted by surveys where actual things are laid out, you know, by the surveyors, but that wasn't evident in this, and so I don't really know. Also, there was no right and title. So in the application, the right and title was for an easement, but it didn't cover the base of IO 245A that proves that Tad owns that. So my opinion, incomplete applications probably should never have gotten to this point, but we're here, we're gonna bring up these points. Your edification. Thank you.
I would like to point out to everybody, not to address all of the concerns or items that you have brought forward, Mike, but the application was deemed complete by our code enforcement officer. That's not to say I agree with our code enforcement officer, but it came to this committee because he made that judgment call.
So. There's some other issues. That are worth talking about now, just because, it's not clear. To me. Whether this requires, one of the questions, is whether this requires Board of Adjustment and Appeals approval under 204. Point 1B9. For a cemetery, I'm assuming is it, are you consider this a cemetery, is this like under the zoning ordinance, under the zoning
Well, it's
ordinance on
interesting,
should
the
be?
state looks at cemeteries and then family burial ground. This is totally separate under the statute as a family burial ground, which is, I assume, included with cemeteries. But they divorce it from cemetery here on the island and municipal cemeteries and stuff like that. This is under the statute as a separate family burial ground.
So you consider family burial grounds not covered by the term statute in the ordinance?
It's determined by specific statutes which are listed in the application. Main statutes 38 MRSA, section 1301. And 13 MRSA, chapter 83. Oops, thank you. Section 1142, thank you, Aaron.
So are you saying that trumps anything that the town has? Well, I'm trying to understand this, well,
But I can't answer that honestly, I don't know. It's just that that's what I applied under, I did not apply under what would be applied to town Winnetville.
well, so what was the site plan review under? What do you consider that site plan review pursuant to which section?
As a town code,
Yeah,
I just picked the one out where it was listed under, residential. As a one of the, one of the applications that are listed, I believe, in the code. Correct.
no, I understand. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from in terms of this application and what your intent is in the application itself. Because for us to review something for site plan, to have a site plan review, there has to be something that's site plan reviewable, right?
Yeah, this is why was given this by Paul and filled it out, Paul Demers, and filled it all out.
Okay,
and provided all the additions to it. Plus having been on all my legwork beforehand as a state.
right. And I'm guessing. So let me take a look, and this was in the materials that are on the site that this is considered use under 204.1B9 cemeteries, but I don't know that that's necessarily what it is. Because that's subject to site plan review there. But if it's, so if under the ordinance, so you haven't looked at the ordinance to see what it falls under in the zoning ordinance? In your,
Well, I went into the ordinance and found that just something was reviewed by the planning board, then went to Paul and got an application and filled it in.
right, but it reviews, is it pursuant to, is it because it's a cemetery, or is it?
It's a
something.
family burial ground, that's what it's legally called, not a cemetery, but a family burial.
Right, I understand that's a state term.
You know, actually a section in the code, state code,
Correct. But within the state code that I have here, okay, 13 MRSA chapter 83, for cemetery registration, family burial ground is a subchapter of that. So I believe if we're talking nomenclature, a family burial ground is a cemetery.
That would be my
Yeah,
reading of it.
makes sense.
That would be the sensible reading of it, the simple reading of it.
It's a separate one underneath.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I look at this as we're sitting here, it's under 204.1B9. It's a cemetery requiring subject site plan review, which makes sense. Why there's an application for site plan review, and the state that the cemetery provisions include a family burial ground as a type of cemetery.
Yeah.
Essentially, and it's not.
It has separate requirements.
It's a separate, right, it's a separate,
It
separate
can't be
issue.
over a quarter of an acre, it can't be this, it can't be that.
Various things for what they'll permit, you know, as a family burial ground. From the state's point of view. But when I look at 204.1B, it says the following uses are allowed as special exemptions in the IR district requiring the approval of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Is that something that you talked about at all with Paul or anything?
I think he said he'd only had 2 or 3 other ones like this in his history of experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a new ground for all of us here
Here's
to
to
kind
tell
of,
you that.
kind of sort it out. So can we talk a second about the waiver of the, from the state? It's just, I just trying to understand that what's going on here in that state. So the state, you file something with the state, they're able to waive provisions.
They were able to waive, yes, their legal counsel waived the position with Sol. If I got the letter from the Langrens, indicating that there was no problem, that it was under the setback for the well. Which is the letters in there from, Trish Langren. That was the only thing that the state needed, that I needed to get a waiver from the state for, was that setback from the well.
And what we're trying to understand when we all find and read through the state criteria for this process is the ability to grant waivers is not defined in that process. So our ability to grant a waiver and the state's ability to grant a waiver is not defined within this.
It's not what,
There's no allowance for it. So we're trying to understand that aspect of your application.
Okay, it has to do with the water quality element of our obligation under the site plan review process.
I mean, I provided them with a soil test, the state, I use that as part of my approval.
So there's also a soil test that goes to the state.
I sent it to them and they appreciated my doing that.
Okay, so one other question, I guess, one thought, by the way, on your point on the shoreland zone, even though it doesn't list cemeteries specifically, or family burial plots, there are some analogous things, and there's a reference to analogous items that can be permitted in the shoreland zone. Obviously, that would require another application, because it would be a shoreline, if it is in shoreline zone, it requires a shoreline zone application as part of it, or at least it needs to be combined into that. I don't know enough about multiple
If it's set back
applications.
further than from the shore.
I don't know. This is the question that was raised. We need to take a look at the,
No, and that would show on the plot map.
yeah, we need to understand that. Obviously, we'll need to round up again with Paul Demers and understand some of the location issues to see what's the appropriate mechanism of review that's required and whether shoreland zoning needs to be part of that. But I just noting that under the shoreland zone, there are permitted like parks and, private parks and the sort or similar uses. And the question would be, is that falling under that as a possible review criteria? There's a number of things there. So my gut feeling is the right thing to do at this point. Yeah, is there anybody else who wants to speak? You,
I would like to, but
absolutely. Here, you go ahead. I'm sorry, my fault.
first I want to say, yeah, I've known you for a long time, good guy, and I support the notion of a green barrier. So I'm not against your intent. My questions are a couple. One, I've been through subdivision plan process over the last, I don't know, how many, 40 years. It's a 58-page application that requires certain provisions to be identified. It's not just setbacks everywhere identified, but it's also elevations.
So I'm sorry, my.
Elevations.
Okay.
Which I think is especially important when you're thinking about something that can work into wells and ponds and septics nearby. So I guess I was hoping I could see the subdivision plan that needs to be signed by planning board, I guess, as approval before final approval is given. And another question is, as a family burial plot, you said you have two sons, two children?
I don't think so. Okay, I don't think they'll use it.
Well, I'm
But I
just
don't know.
curious,
It's like
how many family members can be buried in
the
this?
maximum on this, I believe, was 8.
Eight. So there could be ultimately 8 bodies buried within this spot.
Very good. 8 cremations, 8,
I just.
Actually, could you just please address the comments to the board instead of the comment? That's okay. I understand. It happens. I fall into it too.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I guess I was hoping to see it identified what limitation the family usage would end up being. The second question is, I know that the boards should be very small sometimes. And it's difficult for people to say, look, I need to accuse myself. Can't vote, which might disturb a quorum for voting. As a member of the BOA, do you plan to cast your vote?
Well, here, please direct comments
That's
to me.
Another person of this.
Should a person who's applying for the exception be supported in their voting on that application within the board? Or should they recuse themselves, saying the appearance of impropriety is enough to say I should recuse my vote? Just trust.
Thank you.
So the question was 3 questions, I guess. I'd love to see the subdivision plan, including elevations as required. I'm glad to know that you responded that a limit of 8 bodies could be buried there. And that the question is out on the table, would an individual recuse themselves from a vote over a matter that's involved that person?
And you're asking that in connection, so that's in connection with the Board of Adjustments and Appeals? Or,
Correct, that if that comes to an eventual thing, would it be considered that that should be something?
and I just comment that that's a question for their board.
Okay,
But to them, we're with the planning board, we don't
fair enough. Okay,
tell other
that's
boards
all I had.
what to do.
Can you state your name too?
Oh, I'm sorry, George Hayden, 71 Cottage Road, and have various properties. I received a letter as a butter, though I've now sold that property, but I felt as a member of the public, I could come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, so what is? Yes, please.
Ann Baxter, 348 South Road. I'm also the cemetery superintendent, so I'm very excited about the potential of this because folks were running out of space. And any alternatives like this make sense. I would love to think about doing green burials in our existing cemetery. That's would be quite tough because our plots are now smaller because people have gone to cremations. I mean, that would be something wonderful. And it's something to think about in the future, if and when we expand. I guess I'm a little concerned about, I understand why the questions are coming up, but I'm a little concerned if you look, and I'm sure you probably have the statute that's very specific to family burying grounds, which goes down, and it seems to be pretty specific of what you can do and not do. I'm not sure why this totally turns into a subdivision, because it stays with the property. Even if the property were sold, the right of this burial ground maintains with the ancestors. And the easement is established, so I'm just curious whether it needs to be as complicated as it's seemingly sounding. And I hope we can come to some answers. It's the first time of doing this, and so we don't have anything in our rules to try to deal with it. And maybe that needs to happen, and I'm sorry that Tad's gotta be not the scapegoat, but the canary in the well, canary in the mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's my sense, which is there's a number of questions we have that are that we don't have answers to. Some of them may be the lack of attention to what the phrasing meant, what the intent was, subdivision, not subdivision, things like that. Clearly, this isn't a request for a subdivision because it's checked off. But we have a number of questions that I think we need answers to. I think the appropriate thing to do next is, from my perspective, unless people want to continue tonight, is to continue this hearing to our next regular meeting, and in the interim, try and get a number of answers to some of the questions raised today. Also, there's obviously some documents that we requested that are part of the package that was supplied by the applicant that may be helpful in understanding some of the issues. And at that point, we can regroup and continue with public hearing. So looking to you and
That makes sense.
You do.
Second
No, I
that,
agree.
yeah.
Plan process. We can't proceed any further at this time based on what we have in front of us.
I think so.
Can I just make one suggestion? So you had the clerks add some additional documents to the website, so to me, that appears as though you added some additional information to the public record. Within those documents, it wasn't clear who the member of the public was that submitted that, and so I would just suggest that if you've received any documents such as those from whoever that public was, that because that is public record, that it would be helpful to have that information.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that was, I think I mentioned it was Mike who sent those in.
okay, all right, I don't know if they have that information.
Yeah, I think I
So-
was just trying to get it. up
They
as
have like
quickly
the
as possible.
PowerPoint and stuff like that, and it just seemed for kind of the general public, if they look at it, it might be difficult to
Okay,
recognize or appear that the planning board is withholding whoever might have submitted that, so I just want to be transparent that if there was information from a public that was submitted for permanent record for part of your application, that we have
that makes sense.
whoever that person, kind of when people come here and stand up and say who they are, where their, you know, what their address is.
Yep.
Similar documentation for that would be great. Thank you.
All right, so we'll continue. I guess I'll move that we continue this application to the next regular meeting of the planning board. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, that we
Yeah, I'll
welcome the submission of any materials to help clarify the issues raised tonight.
And the one thing that would be helpful would be, well, the next,
Would you be sending me something to spell out what you want me to supply for the next meeting?
well,
Rather
here's,
than the site plan, if you read the site plan review requirements in our
I thought
ordinance,
this was this. that I
right, but your
submitted.
submission doesn't, in our comments to you, meet those requirements.
Could you tell me what I did?
You did,
Here-
Respond.
yeah, I think we just laid out a whole bunch of things there, but I think the easiest way to get to the answer that you're looking for a list is I'll plan to meet with the code enforcement officer to review the submission itself. And then he can communicate with you about what the specifics are that seem to be, seem to be missing. And then we can take it from there. The one issue we're going to have is, and we have this all the time, is it's very helpful to have all materials being submitted a full week before the actual hearing, so that we have a chance to look at them and consider them. So we'll,
That's not a request, considering. I do.
yeah, so I'll plan to try and meet with the code enforcement officer this Wednesday when he's on the island to go over some of the issues that we've seen here and try and understand better what the legal issues are and what the basically the right analysis of this should be.
Sure,
So that's it. Right, thank you.
thank you. For your time.
Well, we're here for it. So thank you. So we will now move on to item 4. Okay. This review of possible revisions, potential approaches to revision of the public hearing schedule. So let's talk about the ordinances. We may have one set of things right here.
I think one of the meeting minutes. I had offended the recommended changes that we made to the October one.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good night.
Right.
So I'll just kick things off. So we've got a bunch of ordinances that we need to get to work on. We've talked about a number of them before. We've raised them in the past, but I think we need to list what we're gonna work on, and once we get that list of what we think it's important to work on, we can figure out a schedule on how to go about that. And so just, I mean, I wrote out a list here of items that we talked about before or have talked about in passing, and some things that have been kicking around for a while that we need to move forward one way or the other. And so I wanted to just kind of go through that list. So one is first is that zoning ordinance section 110 definitions about the highest astronomical tide that we tried to revise using the suggestion of the state, but the state's suggestion wasn't quite right. So we held off on that. I think we want to bring that back with that slight modification. So that's one of them. Similarly, there's the shoreline zoning ordinance section 108, which has, again, this definition of highest astronomical tide and another, clarifying amendment to that. We've talked about them before. I think we're on board with the general ideas there. It was just that the state's language wasn't correct. So there's 2 of them. The third one I have listed here is the shoreline zoning ordinance modification from a few years ago that has caused some, at this point, I think, uneven application of the need to file an application when you're going to do maintenance. And basically we want to exempt minor maintenance and other things from the requirement of having to file for a permit. And I think that's what everyone expects to happen.
So you're talking essentially that annual regrowth.
That annual regrowth, keeping your paths clear, all that, the stuff that no one thinks should require a permit, but right now as it was changed has led to uncertainty because of the way it's written. We proposed one version of it that was suggested that we simply go back and revisit the initial change that caused it to actually be required. And I think what happened was there was a blanket change put in place that brought in too much. And so, to me, I'm not saying we have to figure it out tonight. I think we know what we have to do approximately, but I think that should be on the list of things to do and move forward with. The next thing I have on my list is something we've been dealing with, but it's modified review process for shoreline zoning applications. I feel like the way the inclusion of shoreline zoning in the piers, wharves and other section has, caused some things that are kind of pain in the neck. Among other things, the requirement that coastal waters review structures that have no part of them that's below highest astronomical tide, things like that, and that's not part of what their review.
I think the town's gonna receive a recommendation from the Coastal Waters Committee
Yeah,
about that. I don't know the specifics.
okay,
I
so,
think they plan to speak to that.
okay, so I mean, I think there's probably some other pieces to that too, but I think cleaning that up so that it moves more smoothly through the process and gets rid of some of the, the clunkiness of the process. So we don't have to go through so many pieces that are really unnecessary in many of the cases. Obviously, if something's a structure below high tide, that's a different story. But that's not what we're talking about for most of these things.
I think the last one's a floodplain ordinance and the wording throughout that for qualified professional.
Right. And we have that here and we can, that's. Had it here, but. Just put it here. So we have that, sheds. So this is the issue that was raised with the garage that's partially in the shoreline zone. And the reason that was allowed to happen was because it was considered a shed, not a garage. And that's because sheds in our ordinance don't have a specific square footage. So some people treat sheds like sheds and some people treat garages like garages, some people treat garages like sheds, it seems. And and I know that because it's happened. So
I'm somewhat conflicted on that, so yeah.
it seems to me that
But I understand the nature of what you're
That
stating. and
yeah,
I
it seems
think
like-
needs to be clarified.
a shed should be, to me, it should clarify the size of a shed. And because it really is something that falls outside of normal review process, so it should be something that's like a shed. 100 square feet, 200 square feet, something in that
Right.
range.
But I would like to point out from a administrative process, if one receives an unsatisfactory determination from the code enforcement officer on that definition or application of the word shed, that the applicant then has the right to appeal to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals for a determination. So the Board of Adjustment and Appeals actually makes that decision, should the applicant be dissatisfied with the code enforcement officer.
Right, okay.
Yeah, do it twice.
Maps, so these are the updating of the various shoreline maps, and we've looked at that. It seems to me, in spending the time looking at that slider, the issue is one that exists currently with that shoreline zoning ordinance, which is the lot lines are just in many cases not accurate. And I think the term I've heard is rubber sheeting of the lot lines. I don't think it's just that, but I don't
What do you
know.
mean by rubber sheeting?
This is,
What
this
do
is,
you mean by that?
in other words, you have a round planet and
Yeah.
you're putting lot lines on that. And so you have the opportunity and likelihood of mismatching because you're trying to put, it's like a Mercator projection is not an accurate representation of
But I
the
think
size.
as explained to us early on, that's part of the GIS analyst role. The person who actually presents and manipulates the data
right,
to account for that within the boundaries of
right.
the presentation.
And because they're, what's clear now is they're definitive, at least, you know, you can have an appeal and everything, but the first order of business is whatever those lines say, that's what the code enforcement officer applies. It's important for us, as we all
It's
agree.
important
to be-
because then what's happening is, as I understand it, the town is using LiDAR to determine slopes and slopes which determine category of shoreline zone overlays. So if the underlying boundaries aren't correct and LiDAR is applied, you could wind up with a depiction of shoreline characteristics that does not match the deeded land.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we're gonna solve every single problem, but I think we need to move this, we need to keep moving this forward to try and make it better. So my guess, my suggestion for dealing with this issue that's been just kicking around for a while is to basically publish that slider site, right, in a way that all members of the public can see it, right, and to take in comments for some period of time from people to let people know it and to talk about it at the next public hearing. And do what we can to get the notice out about the fact that we're looking at this and taking comments from people on any items in their own particular lot that seem to be inaccurate or problematic. And then get those comments in to whatever extent they're in and then take it from there and just keep it moving forward.
You had some that you knew about already though, right, Paul? Some comments? Yeah, I mean, that might be helpful, because I think that when we were talking to them, they're like, what, it's fine, you know, just approve it.
Well, I repeatedly said that my house is depicted on town land.
Yeah,
Okay, that's not an error of a line width. That's a
Right.
few hundred feet. They're showing, okay, so when we go to these maps and you look at my residence, it shows on town land.
So we need to know the scope of each of those. I mean, I know, I
that's a
look at
good
the other.
reference for people to understand that it's wrong, and,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know.
that's the degree of the error that I have observed, and I'd like to know if there are others, because as you suggested, if this is made public and people look at their own circumstances, they know their own physical references, or they have their own boundary surveys.
Yeah, I looked at it, it's like, yeah, the only thing you know is your own,
Correct.
for me.
Right, and I know it's inaccurate, but you know, but the
Put
question
it out
is how,
there. Yeah,
I think we'll just do a crowdsourcing approach to this basically.
Mhm.
And see how, let people bang away at it and see how extensive any issues are and then take it from there. Just so we're clear, it's not like it's more inaccurate than it was before. It's just, there's a lot of inaccuracy that currently in the thing, and the application of all these additional layers on top of it are not necessarily accurately depicted. It's layering on another layer of information.
so I don't think that the town official zoning maps, the hard copper, big papers, have these issues. It resulted from the efforts to put the electronic layered versions together, and they're not all in sync.
Right.
In simple language.
Yeah. So we'll get to work on that, and Vika, I'll talk to you about how we're gonna go about this, because I think we're gonna need some space somewhere on the website to help move this along.
I think that's the whole purpose of a public hearing.
Yeah, but I think it's more extensive than just a public, I mean, I think a public hearing, we can have that, but I think it's gonna be, we're gonna seek more extensive information than just a public hearing. I guess that's what I'm getting at. So setback, I threw this in here just because I heard a bunch of people, you know, saying, you know, should we look at the front setback? I think that probably was mostly related to the library and concerns there. But you know, maybe that's better left to the comprehensive plan process and look at that. I don't want to break that out because that one could be messy.
It's kind of specific to one.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the list I have, and then anything else that's kicking around? Okay, so that's enough for now. Okay. Go to the public.
Are you taking public?
Absolutely.
Mike McKee, 107 Cottage Road. So I would ask the planning board to revisit the additional dwelling unit change we had like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Specifically under the lot requirements. The term was used road frontage. And yet in the zoning ordinance and everywhere else, it's listed as lot frontage. So it's very important that we remain consistent throughout these ordinances. Because we have that one rule that if it conflicts, then go with the most restrictive. So in essence, lot frontage is anything along a road plus a public right of way. And road frontage is specific to along a road. And I brought that up at the town meeting, probably wasn't the place to, it was well over people's heads and was misinterpreted by people. But there's a very specific reason for that, because you're changing the definition and because you go with the most restrictive across any of the ordinances, that's a huge major change. So I'd ask you to look at that. Change lot or road frontage to lot frontage to match the other ordinances.
I need to look through it and get current with it, but as I recall on the ADU, any additional structure had to meet all setbacks. And then there were requirements for septic. All right, there too, but how does the setback issue tie into the requirement that you're stating up for road frontage versus lot frontage?
So in there, in the thing that was agreed upon, it had a summary of the lot requirements.
Okay,
And it was supposedly cut and pasted from the zoning ordinance. However, there was that switch between lot frontage to road frontage. Lot frontage is a definition of 110 in the zoning ordinance. It's very specific. But people commonly say road frontage. Oh, you need 150 feet of road frontage. You need 150 feet of lot frontage, which is different. In some circumstances, it's critical. So I might have been a typo, might have been a whatever, but you need to clean that up because it will cause problems sometime in the future.
Seems worth looking at generally, because I think road frontage and lot frontage isn't necessarily always consistently applied in all circumstances. In the ordinance. That's off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, I mean, the same paragraph in the zoning ordinance is also in the shoreland ordinance. For the lot requirements, right? And those both say lot frontage. And then this new ADU thing that was created, it says road frontage. So that's a change. And if someone wanted to go after someone, they could say, oh, well, in this one, it says road frontage, therefore it trumps this one and it trumps this one.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments? All right, so I'll get to work on a bunch of these you've already done, have to be kind of modified a little bit. Some of them need a little bit more work, but I'll take a crack at putting something together for that.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're good. All right, the next item on the list, the comprehensive review process. I haven't
Comprehensive plan review.
plan reviewed, yeah, conservation.
That's right.
I don't know, I wasn't paying attention, so I haven't seen what's gone on at the board, the select board. I'm assuming that process was approved, Pika, or?
Yeah, it was approved. The only suggestion that the select board had was in the ad hoc committee. It was suggested 1 to 2 members of planning board, select board, and the list of the small group. The select board made the suggestion of keeping it to 1 of those and then suggesting of having 2 members at large. So have you know, one member, one planning board member, one select board member, school board member, fire department member, town administrator, Loren would be the two non-voting members. And then advertise to have the members of at large apply, on the board, so then that way, there would be the better perception that the general public is also involved in the process, and that was supported, so that is what they want.
Makes sense.
They-
Um,
Loren did send us something on this that gave us her feedback on that.
okay, I didn't see that.
I'll do it. If you want me to?
Absolutely.
I don't want to, but.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
I was gonna suggest we wait until we have a larger board.
yeah, well, or yeah,
I
or
wanna
that.
say yes right now, I commend you for that. Alright.
So that's it, that's that was the question,
Right, yeah.
okay. All right, so moving on. Other planning board items not on the agenda, I've got one. That is this, which is, the annual update, which I did not get to. Because I'm busy. But didn't want to send that in until you guys had a chance to look at it. This, I did a draft of it. I've got. I would say the summary of the ordinance and process review, we have to revise that based on what we talked about here tonight. That was just sort of,
Consistent with your presentation of those items, I would suggest you striking.
yeah, I'll stick that on. But so I'd revise this to match what we talked about here and add stuff in.
Well, thank you for putting
It
together.
looks good, Dave.
Priorities.
Okay, so I'll get that out late. To the folks at the select board. Any other items? Not on the agenda that you want to go over? Any public comment on items not on the agenda?
It's been used up. No.
No, you guys are doing a great job.
Okay, next meeting date, it's getting difficult now. Next meeting date. And the issue we have is this continuing issue that we're gonna keep running into, which is I think we're gonna need. It's gonna be appropriate for the code enforcement officer to be, I think, at the next meeting. Although we don't have to. But if we do, we have to move the date and time of the meeting.
Well, why don't we just schedule so we can make it if we need him to.
What do you have for proposed dates? Based on their schedule first,
I'm just looking,
and then I'll.
the date I have really, the date we have scheduled, the 9th, is the best date for me. I'm just
March 9th?
March 9th, that's the normal scheduled date, and my problem is I'm gone. I've got a lot of travel coming in for business. And I've got a few days off too. So my schedule gets really complicated for the next 2 months. Or at least for a chunk of time. So I think I guess we just hold it to March 9th. At the usual time, I think that's the best approach. And I'll meet with Paul. Try and get together with him this Wednesday to talk about how we might address the issue. This conflict that he's got now. With the second Monday in the month meeting, I guess theoretically, we could move it to the third Monday in the month. That's possible.
I am gonna be gone part of the month and I'll get you the dates as soon as I can.
How would you be for the third Monday of the month as an option?
Uh, I mean, do we have to, can we just, you want it just to be permanent, so we're sure. about-
Yeah, kind of, well, at least for the, you know, at least for the next few months, because he's got this obligation that it hasn't gone away and he just. We don't have to have him here, but seems appropriate on occasion to have him here. But if we can't, we can't.
I'm gonna be gone from the 6th of March through the 14th.
You're going 6th of March through the 14th.
Yep.
Okay, well,
That
that
rules out the 9th.
rules out the night,
Yeah.
so we kind of, that now aims at that third Monday then. Would that work for you? St. Patrick's Day is the next day.
What is it, the 16th?
16th, how would that work?
Sure, sounds,
Vika, is the third Monday possible? I'll take a look, see if there's something planned.
I mean, right now, we have nothing on the calendar for that particular day. But we also have a lot of different committees meeting right now, so I say that the earlier you set a date, the better, so.
16th. We're setting it right now.
Yeah, if we've got nothing on the calendar that day, when somebody else wants it, we're just gonna have to say, sorry, it's our.
Yeah,
15th.
3/16
Yeah.
at 6 P.M. And you wanna aim for April, third is close, that's Patriots Day, so that shouldn't even work. Yeah, we'll worry about that later. Okay, so we're meeting March 16th at 6 P.M. Right? Anything else? We'll move to adjourn.
what to adjourn?
Second.
Favor, we're adjourned. All right, thank you.